The first question is, I don't know from whom it is, but is anyone working on a gene therapy for the BRCA gene so women can avoid surgical intervention therapy? I guess that is for this.
Oh, so that's the BRCA gene that makes you predisposed to breast cancer. And so there are groups that are looking to edit that out. And then, of course, you know, one of the best things that you can do is to keep your immune system on the top end, because your likelihood of cancer, even with that gene, goes up with aging, right? As our immune system starts to fail. Great person to talk about that might be Greg Fay. There he is, out there in the audience. But in gene therapy, yeah, so there's a lot of work in editing out and adding in better candidates that hopefully will help us from getting these terrible cancers.
Let's go to the next question, which is also about gene therapy. What is the best general anti-aging gene therapy?
Wow, we're gene therapy heavy now. So probably the biggest impact that we can get with a single gene is just lengthening telomeres. Lengthening telomeres actually impacts most amount of the hallmarks of aging, which is in our industry what we look at in order to treat a disease like aging, we're looking at what's happening at the cellular level, right? So that is a really impactful gene in itself, but there's a whole bunch of other candidates and the list is growing. So I would not get stuck just on one. We're also looking at clotho that has a geroprotecting effect and actually enhances cognitive output, so you want to think a little bit faster. Follistatin helps increase your muscle mass and help fight against metabolic disorder, and that's really important. And PGC1 alpha helps battle mitochondrial dysfunction, which we all get over time as well. So you're going to see a growing list of these come through over the next few years, and many of the new candidates like FGF21 for reestablishing healthy hearts after heart attack and things like that. And these are great genes that are probably good to have upregulated in your system for the long run to protect you against those ravages of aging.
Okay, let's talk about stem cells.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Will activating stem cell release from bone marrow? Okay. Will activating stem cell release from bone marrow lead to stem cell exhaustion?
The first thing to say with this question is to understand really what is meant by stem cell exhaustion. Stem cell exhaustion is a phenomenon of the tissue. So you get stem cells from the bone marrow getting into the blood, migrating into tissue, migrating into the stem cell layer of that tissue, epidermal stem cells, cardiac stem cells, brain stem cells. Every tissue has its own stem cells, and that layer of stem cells can get exhausted. So when that layer is exhausted, that tissue has lost its ability to renew if it is not replenished with stem cells. That is stem cell exhaustion. The idea does not translate to the bone marrow. You don't get stem cell exhaustion from the bone marrow. You get red marrow converting to yellow marrow into a physiological process that, to this day, I don't think it has been researched enough. And probably one of the frontiers in longevity medicine would be to find a way to slow down that conversion. But whatever you're left with in terms of red marrow, that red marrow is immortal in its production. It will shrink, but what is there will release stem cells, and if you boost that release, it doesn't change the population of stem cells in that red marrow. And there are many ways of answering the question. I mean, I don't want to get into too long or too much data, but let me give you two examples. You release a lot of stem cells when you do intense physical activity. Do Olympic athletes run out of stem cells faster than others? No. Do we run out of stem cells? Like, have you seen somebody on the sidewalk walking and suddenly that's it? It was the last stem cell, he's gone. We don't see that. And they have done studies in which you can irradiate an animal and inject one single stem cell. And in 6 weeks, the entire bone marrow is reconstituted and the whole blood system is reconstituted. So your bone marrow is powerful.
The power of your bone marrow. Okay, so Dr. V, your art of living combined with science has what effect on your own biological age in comparison to your chronological age?
We just met and you're already asking about my biological age? Oh, you didn't even buy me a drink! No, so I am 45, that's my chronological age. My biological age is 31. I know people that missed out on the lecture slides. If you go to my Instagram, you'll find the link there, and you can download the slides. But yes, I'm a 31-year-old.
Another question for Liz. So gene therapy is still expensive today in absolute terms. Do you foresee it dropping in price exponentially like Moore's law? And if so, when will longevity treatment be available to the average person?
Oh, that's actually a lot of different questions. So one of our co-founders, George Church, he'll be speaking later today. I mean, his goal and my goal is to make a gene therapy that treats biological aging under $2. That's going to take a while. Just getting it under $2,000 will take a while. But the great thing about treating aging is we're treating the biggest medical unmet need on the planet, and so that will give us the ability to do that. So not only will we be able to create affordable treatments for you, that will actually drive down the cost in treatments for people who are unfortunate enough to be born with a monogenic or single gene mutation. So hopefully, sooner than later, we're working as hard as we can to get drugs into the regulatory system in order to launch them to the entire world. And right now, we're a proponent for a pre-regulatory route that I spoke about that would make it so even right here in the United States, you could get early access for a fraction of the cost, and as more interest grows, we'll be able to drive those costs down even more. So thank you for asking, because that's a very, very important thing. And much like the first supercomputer that cost an enormous amount of money, now in our hand we hold something that is more powerful for only a couple $100, or maybe actually more if you like Apple, which I do.
As a futurist, I of course do have to ask my own question that I want to ask all three of you. What do you expect to happen in your own fields as far as longevity is related until 2030? And as a follow-on, what needs to happen to actually make this a reality?
Sure, I'll start. I'm beginning to see the importance of consciousness in terms of how it affects our longevity. If you want to live a long time, if you can ask yourself, it's not how we live a long time, but why we want to live a long time. Because if you want to just preserve this meat suit for as long as you're here, you're actually operating from that default mode survival consciousness. But if you could start to understand that we are connected to something much, much bigger, that her molecules are in me and vice versa, that we're all connected. And if you live to create yourself and feel alive and feel joy and feel the things that only you feel when those things happen, the things that make you feel alive are as unique to you as your fingerprint. And if you share that aliveness with other people, you start to create this ripple effect, and you start to activate and turn off that default mode and activate the biology of performance and longevity. So I see this field kind of opening up in the consciousness space, and I think it's going to be pretty awesome to see how spirituality actually connects with longevity in the future.
Liz, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so 2030 for regulatory works is pretty short runway, but you'll definitely see a lot more of early and pre-regulatory use of gene therapies. As we get past the 2030 space, you'll start to see these gene therapies be used like immunizations against aging. So we'll take them at much younger ages and before we get sick. And therefore, we'll basically be running the program in the background, keeping the cells more youthful. So you'll see a lot of great things in the next few years. And like I said, even though these are for monogenic diseases, these are really important for a lot of people, and the FDA is moving faster. Those approved drugs do matter to you because they give people access to the technology, and they're a great proof of concept for bigger ideas. So you're going to see a lot of people living longer and healthier through gene therapy that initially are leaving the country to use it, pretty soon, hopefully, staying in the country and using it.
Okay, Christian, you have a few seconds left.
Okay.
No pressure.
So there might be technological development with stem cells, but I think the biggest thing that we will see in the future, is understanding that this whole field developed faster on the clinical side than academia because of various kinds of regulatory obstacles. So now we end up with thousands of clinics everywhere doing their own thing, not communicating. And I think the biggest achievement that we will see is, number one, starting to talk, to really define what is the best way to utilize them in terms of timing, which stem cells, what kind of application. And once we grow this, reduce the price and the reach. And that is going to be an enormous, enormous improvement in our medical life. And the product, like what I talked about here with plants, where you can provide stem cell technology to pretty much anywhere, any place in the world. So I think reach is going to be the biggest development in that field.
Okay. Thank you, all three of you. Thank all of you.